thought I'd show you this afternoon some of the little issues that I've had with jig hooks and different styles of tungsten beads. So this is a size 16 fulling mill jig hook, and it's a 2.5mm anodized olive coloured tungsten bead on here, a standard bead with a countersunk bead, and that bead weighs 0.12 of a gram. I measured that. Now my issue with these is that with a standard slotted bead like this is that when I actually when that's placed properly and tied in properly in the towards the eye of the hook, that if I put a hackle on this this nymph, then I have this great big sort of triangle of spare space in here. So the hackle is either has to go around vertically like this with some form of dubbing or something, which then pushes this out of the way underneath the bead, or it actually comes in at an angle. So the actual the hackle itself is not sitting vertically to the hook shank. So a little bit of a problem with those, and it's just really a case of deciding what to do with this little triangle of space in here. So one of the ways of actually getting around that is to use a slotted bead. So I've got one here. This is again an olive tungsten slotted bead from Taman, and this is 2.5 gram. Sorry, it's 2.5 millimeters, and that weighs 0.13 of a gram. Now, if I get this positioned properly, so that the small portion of the of metal is actually facing towards the bend of the hook, and I actually tie that in properly, and I'll just show you what I generally would tend to do. Then that's one way of getting around it. So once I've got my bead in place, I'll put one lock under around the hook eye itself, the eye of the hook, and the other one behind the bead, and then I can really solidly tie that in place. So that bead is now locked. But now, instead of actually having a large space there, I've got a bead which is positions much more like it would be on a standard hook. So when I put a hackle in here, it's just like a standard hackle, and I can put a tiny bit of dubbing just in front of that, which will actually then just fill in any tiny gaps there. So that I prefer, and it is interesting that the slotted beads are actually just slightly heavier than the countersunk beads. I think obviously they remove a slightly less material by doing that. And another way of doing it, let's get that out of the way, is to use a little tungsten collar. So this now is a standard 2mm, so a slightly smaller bead, and that weighs 0.05 of a gram, with a tungsten collar. And the tungsten collar here is weighs 0.07, so that in total weighs exactly the same as the standard countersunk bead. So what I can do with this now, with the tungsten collar here, is I can convert a conventional hook into effectively a slotted hook, position-wise. It's much closer once I've actually got a bit of thread on there, and if I'm really careful, I can actually position these little collars to actually get them pretty much upright. It sometimes works better if I actually put the bead on the opposite way around, as long as it doesn't cramp the eye, and a tiny bit of super glue on there will just hold that in place. And again, now I've got a much more upright hackle if I actually put a partridge hackle or something in there, and I haven't got great big triangles of empty space to actually worry about. And whether that makes any difference or not, I don't know, but I just like the idea that if I'm actually putting a hackle on a nymph, whichever way up that nymph actually sits, the hackle is sitting properly. It's even all the way around rather than actually being at an angle and longer and shorter fibres on it. So hope that's helpful. I'll probably post later on tying up some of the actual nymphs themselves.